Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Leadership Purpose with Dr. Robin podcast. I'm so glad you're here and you're listening to the podcast. We've been ranked in the top 5% of all podcasts globally, according to Lisbon Notes. So thank you for helping us get here. And let's keep it going. We hear this from podcasts all the time, but it does make a difference. Please subscribe, review, and rate the podcast. It'll help us keep going. All right. Now, today, I'm very excited to have this conversation. We'll be speaking with Jenn Cohen. Now, let me tell you a little bit about Jenn. She has always been fascinated by the power of intuition. That's right. You heard that right. Intuition. And throughout her 27-year career in the entertainment industry, collaborating with major studios like DreamWorks, NBC Universal, IMAX, and Warner Media, Jenn discovered that some of the most impactful decisions often stem from intuition. Ooh, I can't wait to hear more about this. But after stepping away from the corporate world, Jenn embraced her calling as an intuitive consultant. She applies her skills to help individuals and organizations unlock their potential. And today she empowers clients from individuals to executives to entire teams with practical tools to gain clarity, recognize blind spots, and make decisions aligned with their goals. And her work fosters personal and professional growth, creativity, and my favorite, purpose. Welcome, Jenn Cohen.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm so glad you're here. All right, so now you heard me read your introduction, but why don't you tell us in your own words a little bit more about you first and then about what you do?
Sure. So for me, I've spent 27 years, like it said, in the entertainment industry, and it was a fantastic career. I loved it until I was hearing a voice that saying, it might be time to move on here. And that was my intuition, which had guided me since day one of getting into the field. And I've told this story before, but I think it bears repeating, is in my 20s, I had a very unexpected death with my father. He died very suddenly, and I went home. I was just starting my junior year in college, and I went home. And the evening of his funeral, I was lying on his side of the bed, my parents' bed on his side, and it was pitch black, total darkness. And I was kind of calling out to God, just saying, "Why?" And the bedside light just flashed on and off and on and off. And I just stopped in my tracks. Tears stopped instantly. And I looked over at the light. Now again in complete darkness. I said, "Dad, was that you? Is that you?" Flashed on and off and on and off. And so there was a realization that communication did not necessarily have to be in physical form at that point. And when I went back up to school, he continued with beautiful signs all around. In my grief stage as a 20-year-old, I really got stuck on the anger because just knowing that he was going to be there for all the milestones. But in that, I didn't really understand exactly what I was doing. But intuitively, I said to him, "Okay, since you left so early, I'm giving you the basically, you're in charge of my profession." And I handed that over to him. And I heard very clearly, "I'll take that. I'll take that. Absolutely. You never have to worry about that." And it was a way for me to feel safe and secure and not let my mind really race. And in doing so, when I could hand that over to him, I freed up so much of my mind. I freed it up from worry and anxiety. And it doesn't mean that there weren't hard times. Of course there were. But he very beautifully led me on this path in my entertainment career through synchronicities of meeting people. And in that time that I was in entertainment, I never really pigeonholed myself into one department. And I really attribute that to my intuition and to my intuitive self and to listening to my heart and not saying, "Oh, well, if I start in publicity, that means that I have to continue on in publicity." No, if I start in animation, which I did, I started in a DreamWorks animation in the publicity department. The first year that it was in it was and I mean, talk about, an amazing job. And I could have stayed there. The problem was at the time is that everybody was staying there. It was a fantastic place to work. And I could feel my inner purpose saying, okay, I know this is really comfortable, but it's time to move on. And I know that you talk about that a lot. And for me, it was that intuitive self that was just like, okay, like, let's go. And so I spent my 27 years and probably about 2 to 3 years before I actually left that job. And I was living in Manhattan at this time, and I had climbed up the ranks to the top of the executive, line of work at that point. I could have left about 2 to 3 years before, but I know that you know this, its intuition is subtle. It doesn't often get loud, but it does repeat itself. And it was in that realization that then I became an intuitive consultant and an intuitive channel. And so, that's always, the next step after decades career in entertainment. You just become a channel. So it was great to follow it, and here I am.
It's a lot to unpack there. There's quite a bit to unpack. I'm fascinated by all of it. All right, so let's go back to the earliest time. Let's go back and thank you for sharing that experience with your father. It sounds like it was a beautiful way to stay connected. Now, let me ask you, have you had, before that moment, had you had any sense of intuition, understanding, and knowledge on that prior to the experience?
I think I did. I was always very observant as a kid. I didn't mind kind of like holding back. I never had to be like front and center. I loved being front and center, but I didn't have to be as a child. And I could energetically feel, as most children can. But I was very cognizant of that. Like I could put a name to what I was feeling. Um, and I was fascinated. I was fascinated by, when I was growing up, it was psychics and, mediums. And I just thought that that was so cool. It never scared me. But it wasn't until, and it's really been kind of a theme of my life. It wasn't until this big event happened that I could name it and say, boom, like this is truth. It doesn't matter if something is physical, that can be true, but if there is non-physical, that is to me felt even more true than anything that I was looking at.
Mm. So this was the defining moment that sort of crystallized what had been all along been there. And, it sort of was crystallized in this moment.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's amazing. Well, I'm guessing it reappeared in many ways. We're talking about these sort of defining moments. So this moment now, when you're in DreamWorks, is that the one you said you were there first? And then it started coming back again a little louder. Tell us about that moment. Maybe that exact moment, but the moment of time.
Yeah, yeah. Um, it becomes a restlessness for me. That's how it starts to show up. And when you are not in your intuitive, free-flowing, purposeful state, your critical mind, comes online, and it tries to keep you safe. It tries to keep you, comfortable. And our intuition has no reason to keep us safe and protected. It's not here for smallness, it's here for greatness. And so I would find myself in that job, and it was great. It was fantastic, which again is the thing that's saying, stay, stay. It's so great. The grass isn't always greener, all those things that people say. But I could tell I just wanted more. And I was getting irritated and I was getting irritable. And, I wanted more responsibility. Things that had brought me joy before weren't anymore. It was, and there was no reason for it because they hadn't changed, I had changed. And that's the realization. And for me, in the beginning of that journey, it was I needed my intuition ramped up to begin to take another step outside of that company when I realized, oh, I'm acting out of character here. And the moment I start acting out of character, that's okay. That's my intuition saying, nope, nope, nope. Now's the time, and here's the path.
Yes.
So that's just one way.
Makes sense. All right, so you're acting out of character and you said you were irritable. Like, what's an example? And I'm only saying this because it might resonate with someone when they say, oh, that's what I'm doing right now.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And you can feel it in your body. You're like, oh man, I just snapped at that person. Um, I can just remember there was a specific this like responsibility that I had had for quite some time, and I was ready to leap and go and become and have more responsibility at DreamWorks. And what they had done is that they brought in somebody to to do the responsibility that I was doing right now, but they didn't position it as um, a growth step for me. That's not how it was. I saw it very clearly as this person is now taking over the job that I have done for several years. And now I'm getting kind of, edged out of this. Had I really, been cognizant of my intuitive self, coming in and saying, okay, see, this is the time for you to step out and to create your new responsibilities. um I wouldn't have been so protective over that, and that's the beauty of the universe that we live in. When you're, I'll just say, when your sixth sense, which I like to think of our first sense is intuition, but when that sense tells you it's time to go and you continuously stick arm or Heisman it and say, no, no, I'm not ready, I'm not ready, I'm not ready, it will typically put in, a scenario that's like, are you sure? You might need to look at this a longer time.
Yeah, it's something that helps you kind of move along. It's your attention at the various levels of how it could get your attention. Yeah.
Yeah. And that
And
was
so,
that
go ahead.
myself throughout my career.
Um,
Exact same scenario, which is interesting.
really?
Yeah.
All right, so you pulled that one, I'm guessing, at that time. All right, so since you said an exact same scenario, tell us about another one, for example.
Yeah. So I built my job around connections with I'll just say certain departments, and um, it had never been done at the place that I had been, at the company that I had been in, and it
Which is a different company than the last one. Okay.
totally
All right.
different. Well, I actually say it's my last job, so we'll span those 27 years, and
Okay.
in between there are versions of this that happened. But in my last job, it became very successful. The kind of process that I just developed intuitively. It's not groundbreaking. It's just how this company didn't operate, but how I implemented this, and they saw the results. And when they saw the results and fiscally how it could enhance the bottom line, they then brought in somebody that was, again, reporting structure into a different reporting structure than I was, so that, that's where that went. And my intuition was like, oh my God, I can't, well, that wasn't my intuition. My ego was like, I can't believe that this is happening again to me, where my intuition was very slowly showing me, hey, this pattern, this way, what's going to happen. You've read this book before. And I could start to see it, but my ego was still very much wanting it to be right. And there is no right and wrong. There's a neutrality. There's the peace that I feel now was completely gone from the behavior that I was acting in my last, again, I would say my last 6 months at that job. But 2 to 3 years before, it was dropping these hints of like, this is coming, this is coming. And I mean, it's almost like I would get like a cheat sheet from some of, my coworkers of like, hey, like this person's going to come and they're going to start doing what you're doing. And then the fear would rise up of, oh, my job is going to be gone. I'm not going to be relevant anymore. All of that thing. I'm going to get fired. All of the things. And when I would push away my intuition, it shut me down completely. And I was in fighting mode. And it was like, that's not right. And I was never going to convince them to keep things the same. It's just they were stuck in how they wanted this organization to feed up to a different leader. And again, it's a process. It's a process, but when you become aware of it, by the time that you make your decision, you have gone through the fear, you have gone through the egoic stage, you have exhausted yourself to the point of where you're like, thank goodness I'm out of that. Thank goodness.
So is that happened one thing for you? After the times that came to pass, what you kind of thought would happen. So now it's the time for you to make the decision to either stay or go. It sounds like you had the option to either stay or go. So tell us about that. Was there wrestling? Did your intuition automatically say go? Did you hear a voice? Or was it a process? Again, there might be somebody listening who right at this moment they're going, should I stay? Should I go? They made all these changes. They may have an experience similar to yours. The pattern repeated itself. They probably been in it for a long time and they were like, oh, this has happened before. So tell us about what was happening in that specific moment of time.
Yeah. So a good clue that you're in this is if you continue to say the same story or like a phrase when you're talking about something to friends, colleagues, family. And what I would continually hear myself saying was, it's like talking to a wall. Talking to these people is like talking to a wall. And then I have a meditation practice, and in my practice, at that time I was doing it in the evening. One evening, I saw an image of myself look me straight in the eyes and say to me, "It's like talking to a."
Oh, that's you. Oh,
Oh, this is a me problem. I need to.
yeah.
Yeah. And so that was the beginning of a real shift of being, playing this part of this actor in this movie versus becoming an audience and then seeing the movie for what it is in that distance and saying,
Yeah.
I don't need to participate in this way.
Yeah. So you got that insight. So how long approximately from the insight to the actual move and what happened in between? Was there more wrestling or was there, I just gotta go?
Oh my gosh, it escalated pretty quick. I would say 6 months, but this was during pandemic, so we'd had a lot of other factors with it. And again, I was living in Manhattan, which, if anyone's lived in Manhattan or been or visited Manhattan, the energy there is ridiculous. And I'm a California gal, and so when the pandemic hit and the city shut down, I could breathe, which
Makes sense.
which is an oxymoron. Like, I mean, it doesn't even make sense with what was going on at the time. But I could have that space, and I could then hear myself, and then I could, yeah, and again, because we were on screens for a lot of our meetings at that time, there was space. There was space there. And so from that realization, I would say, yes, 6 to 7 months. But once you know, once you notice something, in a picture or whatever, and you didn't notice it, and then you see it, you're never going to not see it in that picture. And that's basically what it was. And the universe really speeds up in order to give you, high definition of what's wrong in that picture. And then it'll just continue and continue to the point of where I was so uncomfortable. At this time in the entertainment industry, and still going on, unfortunately, but a lot of layoffs were happening, acquisitions, there was a lot going on. And so there were rounds of layoffs. And I called up my HR representative and I said, for the next round of layoffs, I would like to submit my name. And that was kind of the reaction that she said. She's like, what? I said, yeah. She's like, are you sure? Do you want to take some time? And I said, no, this is it. And when I hung up with her, I started like dancing around the room. It was just freedom at that point.
Yeah, sound like a sense of relief.
Yeah.
We were talking about it because it had been building up and it was almost like this was an opportunity. They had a structure built in for you to sort of bow out gracefully.
That's right.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like the 6 months prior, it kept getting more and more difficult for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was a resistance. And I think like that's where one of the processes of listening to your intuition is really seeing where your resistance is. And we all have it. But resistance is really based in, our critical hemisphere of our brain. It's based in fear, and for good reason. And I'll say that I'm not. I don't regret those 6 months. I don't regret those 2 to 3 years when I was coming to it. It was perfectly aligned and perfect timing for me to put my name on a list that was going to happen pretty quickly.
Yeah. Yeah. And do you think that fear for you wasn't around, not having a job or not knowing what's next? Or do you know what the particular fear or fears were?
Yeah. I think a lot of us grow up with the pressures of, in order to be successful, you've got to have a corporate job, you've got to have insurance that's paid for you, and in the entertainment industry specifically, it's one of those jobs when you start to talk with someone, their eyes kind of like perk up and they say, oh, did you work on this? Or, oh, this person, oh, I love that show or whatever. So there was an instant connection with people. And I started fearing like, what am I going to talk about? This has been my life. How am I going to support myself? Because, that again is what people, will try and, I'll just say stagnate, like where you are. And those fears, and then again, the pandemic came, that really wasn't for me though. That was one of those where I almost feel as if it was calling.
Yeah.
And in a real reset of how I was going to live this second kind of half of my life.
Yeah. And you use the word calling, which suggests to me not just a moving away from the frustrations and the challenges of that past. Just moving away from that. But calling suggests to move a compelling energy towards something else. Was that your experience, this notion of being compelled? And did you know what it might be?
So, it's my dad started showing up a lot. It was kind of like, you've gone down this path and he visited with every job transition, with signs and things like that. And when I moved back I just felt the pull to come back to California. And I had, again, guided by him and intuition, had bought a place in 2017, didn't move into it until 2021. And it was like I had bought it as my safe haven that I didn't know I was going to need. And it was in this place where it was quiet. The energy was completely different from Manhattan. That my dad came to me on Valentine's Day of that year. And Valentine's Day was always special for us. And he came through and I started channeling him with automatic writing. And I filled out 3 whole journals in the course of 4 days. And it was just a divine download of, this is where you've been. This is kind of this next phase. I'm reminding you of our pact together. I'm reminding you that this is actually the work and the purpose. And I've been doing, I'll just say I was never hired for my PowerPoint skills, in entertainment. Like that wasn't my thing. I've been really, really good with people. And I needed those relationships, and I needed the polarity of not being in my intuition to being in my intuition to come to the place of channeling, of supporting people in tapping into their intuition and to guiding them through maybe challenging, spaces in their life.
It's amazing. And going back to story, it went full circle from how it started with your connection with your father, how it brought you to the next phase of your life, culmination of this new move. And it's fascinating. Thank you for sharing that heartfelt and moving story with us. It's deeply personal. I'm sure it's going to be a benefit to a lot of people, and I'm sure it has already. So, speaking of a lot of people, the podcast, this is who I imagine the listener to be. A high achieving woman who is successful but unfulfilled. And let me tell you what my definition of high achieving is. High achieving woman is someone who is ambitious, responsible, good at a couple things. She's the one that people come to in professional life. It would just, I want to hear your advice on this, whether it's related to her role or not. Even in her personal life, family, neighbors, community, they come to her, ask for her advice or wisdom. So she's sort of the go-to person. That's the character. And now she's experiencing nothing's wrong. Everything looks good. In fact, people are applauding where she is, what she has achieved. But something's missing. And she just can't put her finger on it. And she's not quite sure, but she knows she wants more. She's feeling like she's meant for more. So this is who we're talking to right now. And I feel like you could relate to her in some ways.
Absolutely.
All right. So now she's listening to us. From your experience, either professionally or personally, what's just some words of encouragement or anything you would like to leave her with as she's listening today?
So all of those people that you're serving so well and serving so greatly, there is one person that needs your attention at the front of the line, and that is you. But I'm going to say it's a younger version of you, and that younger version of you is, if you imagine a line of all the people that you serve in a day, it's like she gets to the front of the line and someone cuts it, and someone cuts it, and someone cuts it. And then she ends up farther and farther and farther back in the line. And if you can kind of envision that, and how that feels to that younger version of you, and what that does in your mind of how her self-worth then gets impacted. I would say maybe one day, very soon, if it's today, amazing. Just say, anytime that someone tries to cut that line, say, you know what, I'm going to have to get back to you. And it can be 10 minutes, it can be 15 minutes, but just beginning to allow that younger version of you a little bit of your advice, a little bit of your attention, it's going to do wonders, and to practice that every single day.
Yes. I'm imagining people just putting themselves at front of the line right now. So thank you for sharing that wisdom. And Jenn, you've been so generous with your thoughts, your insights, and your time. But before we go and tell people how they can be in touch with you, is there anything that I didn't get a chance to ask you or didn't think to ask you that you want to share? It's just anything that's popping up in your mind right now. One more thing. If not, it's okay. But if there is, here's the opportunity to share them.
We all have intuition. It is our birthright. We all have it. I said earlier, not only do I think it's a sense, I think it's our first sense that we're born with, and we're all channels. And whether it be writing a book, whether it be painting, whether it be musician, whether it be singing, whether it be, helping others, whether it be gardening, whether it be, anything that you love to do is your first clue as to how you channel.
Yes, yes. I love that. I love that. Well, so now I'm imagining people might want to say, well, how can I hear more? Or they want to follow you in some way. So where can they be in touch with you?
Well, the easiest way is through my website. It's Jenn Cohen. It's Jenn with 2 N's, Cohen, intuitive.com.
Okay. And we'll be sure to put that in the show notes. Jenn, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure having this conversation with you.
Oh, thank you. It's been great.
Okay, everyone. I love this conversation. I hope you did too. And I'd love to hear your response to it. Follow me on social media. I spend most of my time on LinkedIn, but I'd love to hear your response to this episode. At Robin L. Owens, PhD. At Robin L. Owens, PhD. And until next time, this is Dr. Robin.